Extrasensory perception, ESP, is a sensory information that an individual receives which comes beyond the normal 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch. Extrasensory perception, ESP, is defined as a way of receiving information about the world through channels other than the normal senses. By going beyond normal senses, ESP claims to gather information paranormally. ESP can be a tool useful in providing an individual with information of present, past, and future events. The term was adopted by Duke University's psychologist J.B. Ryan to denote psychic abilities such as telepathy, clairaudience, clairvoyance. ESP is also sometimes casually referred to as intuition, gut instinct, or hunch. ESP is most commonly called the sixth sense. Every person is a spiritual being, whether they know God or not. It is the presence of a living spirit within each one of us that differentiates us from a dead person. So, as long as the Spirit of God resides in us, we're living. If that Spirit's removed, then of course we cease to exist. Living persons are alive because they are energized by God's Spirit. The life God imparts has many levels: human, plant, animal, to name a few. Some possess a soul and others do not. People who have extrasensory perception, or ESP, are said to be psychic. Some believe that everyone has ESP. Others think that only a few special people possess this ability. The essence of ESP and other paranormal powers are disputed. Laboratory tests have attempted to determine the existence of ESP and discovered that psychophysical mechanism which causes ESP to manifest. The mind has been equated with the brain, and scientists search now to discover how ESP is registered in the brain. The term ESP was used in 1870 by Sir Richard Burton. A French researcher, Dr. Paul Jour, in 1892 used the term to describe the ability of a person who had been hypnotized or were in a trance state to externally sense things without using their ordinary senses. However, the paranormal, I could even say it this way, however, the phenomenon of ESP activity has been indicated much earlier. Some say even in Bible times. And it's from this perspective that our lesson has been designed. Although there is no clear evidence as to the certainty of the phenomenon, it has attracted the attention and enthusiasm of many throughout the centuries. Ministers of the Bible have made ESP out to be something either evil or demonic. The truth is that various forms of ESP have been performed not only in the Bible, but throughout history by some of the most influential spiritual leaders ever known. The Bible is full of psychic experiences of every kind: clairvoyance, seances, out-of-body experiences. Most people read right over these psychic events without even noticing them. We will be discussing individuals in the Bible who utilize varying types of ESP. We will also discuss the relevance of ESP in the life of the conscious creator. While there are many kinds of ESP purported to exist, we will be discussing a few examples of ESP in the Bible. Clairvoyance is the ability to know of an event or events that are undetectable by the normal senses and include such things as remote viewing, or even the ability to see inside an envelope that's sealed. Ancient names and biblical references for clairvoyance was called seer, or having a second sight, seeing visions, discernment of spirits, and a few examples in the Bible of people who had this ability was Joseph, Samuel, Daniel, Isaiah, Jesus, John the Beloved, Paul. We tap into a conversation that took place between Nathanael and Jesus. And Nathanael says, "Lord, how do you know me?" asked Nathanael. Jesus says, "Well, I saw you while you were still under the fig tree before Philip called you." And Nathanael said, "Teacher, you are certainly the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." And Jesus replied, "You believe me because I told you that I saw you under a fig tree. But if you stick with me, you will see greater things than that." Clairaudience. Samuel was brought to the shrine of Shiloh to learn the ministry. The first night he heard a voice calling him. He thought it was Eli the prophet, who was sleeping outside his door. But when Samuel rushed out, Eli said, "I had not spoken." This happened 3 times before Eli realized that Samuel was experiencing a clairaudience or a psychic hearing. Eli said it was the Lord speaking, and he told Samuel to listen to what he had to say. Samuel did this and was given a message. This made him a medium between spirits and the material world. Samuel used his psychic ability also to choose David as king of Israel. When David was brought to him, a voice inside of him said, "This is the one." Therefore, he chose David as king of Israel. Precognition. This is the ability to foresee the future. Generally speaking, precognition is the ability to foresee future events without using cards, dice, crystal balls, magic, but by receiving information with one's own mind. Many people purport to have this ability to see the future by using devices mentioned above. But the use of such devices technically is not ESP. We have a few examples in the Bible of people who were able to see future events. Jesus, Samuel, Joseph, Daniel, Paul, Peter, Jonah, Isaiah, and these are just a few. Peter began to tell of an incident about his own psychic abilities. And he began to explain that when he was in the city of Joppa praying, in a trance, he saw a vision. And he says, "I saw a large sheet being let down from the heavens, and it came down where he was. And he looked and saw 4-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, reptiles, birds of the air. And then I heard a voice saying, 'Get up, Peter, kill and eat.' And Peter replied, 'Surely not, Lord. Nothing impure or unclean has ever touched my lips.' The voice spoke from heaven a second time and said, 'Do not call anything impure that God has made clean.' This happened 3 times, and then the sheet was pulled up into the heavens again. And right then, 3 men who had been sent to Caesarea stopped at the house where Peter was staying, and the Spirit told him, don't hesitate, go with them. And this is how the Gentiles received the gospel for the first time. Saul of the Old Testament, before he was king, was going through the land of the Benjamites because his father's donkeys had ran away. And they came to a place, and Saul's servant said, come, let us go into this place because there's a man in here that knows the wisdom of God. And he's an honorable man, and everything that he says comes to pass. And of course, Samuel told Saul where the donkeys were, but beyond that, he told him that he would be king, the first king of Israel. In the Bible, we discover in the book of Jonah that Jonah was told to go to Nineveh and speak against the people there, instructing them to repent, or lest the judgment of their actions would come upon them. The people of Nineveh heard the words of Jonah, and they repented of their ways, and the result was that their life was saved. Let's talk about psychokinesis, or the ability to affect or to move objects by the power of one's own mind. In the Old Testament, we discover a story about the prophet Elijah. He and his people were clearing out an area of the woods. And while doing this, one of the men, while cutting down a tree, the axe head of his axe flew off into the water. And he cried out, "Oh my Lord, this was a borrowed axe." And the man of God asked him, where did the axe head fall? When he showed him, Elijah cut a stick, threw it in the water, and made the axe head float. And he told the man, reach out your hand and grab it. Now you would say, well, DeCarlo, that's not solely using one's mind to make an object move. Well, let me give you a few more examples. Moses, when he was to cross the Red Sea, he put out his hand and the waters parted. Joshua likewise parted the Jordan River. Elijah and Elisha both parted the waters in their time as well. Let's talk about telepathy. This is the ability to perceive or to transmit thoughts from one person to another by the use of one's mind. How many of us make a statement and someone that's close to us says, I was just thinking the exact same thing? At that moment, we're operating out of a spirit of telepathy. Let me give you an example in the Word. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing such and such place, because the Armenians are going down there. So the king of Israel checked the place indicated by the man of God, and he found that Elijah was correct. So the king of Israel was on his guard when he passed such and such a place. This enraged the king of Aram. And he summoned his officers together, and he asked his officers, demanding of them, will you not tell me which one of us is on the side of the king of Israel? None of us, my lord the king, said one of his officers, but it's Elijah, the prophet, who is in Israel, who tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. So what we discover here is that Elijah had the ability to know what the king of Aram was about to do, and he would tell his king. He knew the thoughts of the enemies of Israel. But let's go to the New Testament. It says that Jesus knew in his spirit what they were thinking to themselves. And he asked them, why is it that you're thinking these things? So we even know that even Christ had the ability of telepathy. Let's talk about another gift. Psychometry. Psychometry is the ability to learn about a person by touching an object which belongs to them. We find ourselves in the book of Acts, and the writer tells us that they had been in Caesarea for several days when the prophet Agabus came to us from Judea. He took the belt of Paul, and he tied up his own hands and his own feet, and he told them that the Holy Spirit said that some of the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem will tie up the man who owns this belt, and they will hand him over to the Gentiles. We also see the use of psychometry in recent times, where you have a lost person and somebody that we call a psychic would take some clothing of that lost person and help the authorities to discover where this person's remains are, or hopefully the person is alive, but we discover where the person is at that moment. So we see that these gifts that were purported in the Bible still exist today. And my goal for you conscious creators out there is that you begin to utilize your gifts without fear that there's some type of demonic thing that God does not want you to have. Realize that all good and perfect gifts are from above. And you can have no gift except that it be given to you from God. Now, the problem is not the gift, but the use or misuse of a gift. So, it's up to you, creators, to use the gifts and talents that God's given you for His glory, so that you can be that conscious creator living out the life that you were destined to live. Let's talk about the Mount of Transfiguration. Jesus took Peter, John, and James with him and went into the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became as white as the brightest star. Two men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in glorious splendor, and they talked with Jesus. They spoke about his departure, about what he was about to bring to pass in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions were very sleepy, but when they were fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men speaking with him. So now what we see is that figures of people who were dead were standing before Jesus. Now we call this mediums. But we see that Jesus was able to call forth people of the past and speak to them by the power of the Holy Spirit. And we know that in Old Testament it says that God did not allow people to associate with people that associated and brought back mediums, as it were. But the point that I'm trying to bring about is that we have to look at the source and what it is that the person who has this gift is using the gift for. The Bible is full of psychic events. Some say that everyone has some degree of ESP, and those who study ESP make no connection between it and magic. Although there are some disagreements over this even among the practitioners, the majority deny any connection between the two. It is generally assumed that if one has ESP, more likely he or she was born with it and did not acquire it through some supernatural means. Just as some people have great eyesight and hearing than others, it is assumed that people with ESP simply have sharpened their ability to utilize this skill. We discover that in the book of Genesis that Abraham had some divine encounters with spiritual beings that came and spoke to him about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and also about the prophecy of a child to be born unto Abraham. And we realize that these beings were from a higher plane of existence, or what we call spiritual. And that's why when we talk about ESP, we're speaking of spiritual as opposed to the material. So people that have ESP have just tapped into their own spiritual ability. It's not magic, but most of us have gotten so out of tune with who we are that we only can operate out of the level of the five senses. We're told that Jacob himself wrestled with a heavenly being. We're told that the Ten Commandments was written with the finger of God. Some say that this could have been what they call automatic writing, which happens when a person puts pen or pencil to paper and words just flow. But the words that are flowing on the page is not from the mind of the writer, but an outside source. Examples of ESP are, like I said earlier, sixth sense, gut feeling, intuition, deja vu. How can you improve your own ESP? Let me give you a few things that you can do. First, ask, seek, and know that your request is being heard by divine intelligence, and that God has put that desire in you to grow out that ability. You must desire to develop your abilities in any given field in order for it to blossom. So the first thing that you must have is a desire. Secondly, you must believe that you have within you the ability to bring about this gift of ESP. Talk to others who also utilize their gift of ESP and see how they begin to improve their ability. Seek out a teacher. And in this, make sure that your teacher is of a like-minded spirit. Make sure that you're evenly yoked with this teacher. You don't want somebody that's in satanic rituals being your teacher when you're going in a totally different direction. Meditate. Meditation allows you to quiet your mind so that you can be open to the voice of the universe. Someone once said it this way, that prayer is our talking to God, but meditation is our listening. Read and search the internet. Like anything else, you want to learn as much as you can, and a good source of that is books and online information. And it's also a cheap resource. Practice. Nothing can be developed until you exercise. That is true for sports, math, and especially for ESP. Mind power is the same as physical power, and it needs exercise in order to increase your ability. Lastly, experience it. Next time you experience a gut feeling, intuition, coincidence, chance meetings, deja vu, or you call someone and they say, I was just thinking about you. Act in gratitude to divine intelligence and begin to give thanks, because what we give thanks for, it expands. And what we will discover is that we will see more and more of these coincidences, as it were, in your life. And you can begin to build up your gift of ESP. There's so much more that I can say on this subject of ESP. And there's so many Bible verses that I could give you. But what I want to say to you right now, Creator, is begin to practice where you're at. And understand that this is a God-given ability. Use it to His glory, and you will see your gift grow. And remember this, that only you can create your perfect world. Not God, nor man. Only you can create your perfect world.